That's almost lunchtime, so
we gotta go. Well, hello, friends. We're going to share with you today our big COVID adventure.
Good morning.
2020. So we're exhausted. This is what you look like after 4 or 5 days of camping, and come back home, look in the mirror, and
This is what you get.
Our story has been something else so far. It's been an interesting year, of course. We started back in, was it March that everything started happening with the kitchen, and we tore things out, and we'll plan on doing a video to kind of share with you the overall arc of the kitchen renovation. Everything was torn all the way out, all the way down to the dirt under the house, and now most of it is back, as you can see, coffee cups in the pantry behind us and all that kind of stuff. And of course, at the same time that we started the demolition, I think was that the 12th?
12th of March.
Of March.
The next weekend.
And that weekend started the COVID outbreak scare here in America. And so everything started shutting down except for Lowe's, which was good.
Thank you, Lord.
So that's we've watched as people were very timid. It was almost empty to, holy cow, can we find a parking space to get what we need today? And at the same time, we've been blessed over that process, and we'll talk more about that in the video we do on the kitchen reno. But people helping and giving their time and their efforts and borrowing tools and all those kind of things happening. But so we decided finally, okay, summer's coming up, the kitchen is functional, we have running water, all the appliances are in, we need a break, so let's go camping. We decided that what we would do is leave Sunday after our drive-in service and go camping down at Wind Creek State Park. Katie, when you started calling around to try to find camping spaces,
there weren't many places open.
Yeah,
that had spaces open. All of Alabama state parks have been open, but that is where people have been going to escape COVID. And so, in order to find a spot, we had to look at places that we hadn't been before. And Wind Creek was one that came highly recommended by anybody we spoke with. We had hesitated going there because they had a massive windstorm a few Sundays ago, and a lot of damage, but thankfully it was to one spot in the campground and the rest of it was open. So we headed down Sunday after church.
Our plan was to go and to stay through Wednesday, and on Wednesday come back home and try to be back in to support our church family. And of course, I'd already talked with Dr. Jackie Bentley, our associate pastor, about speaking that night anyway, so not a whole lot of pressure to be back that night, but just kind of that was the plan. Well, Sunday we loaded up and hit the road, and it's funny how much you forget about camping when you haven't done it, and so when you go several months and you haven't been out, you know what did we forget? How do we do this again? How do we load up? Putting the kayaks on top of the truck. I'd forgotten basically everything. I remembered that you could back the truck in under and lower them onto the truck, but as far as how to unhook them and all that kind of stuff from the rigging that we have there, completely forgot. But anyway, we finally got on the road and headed down towards Wind Creek, which takes us about 2 hours? Hour and a half drive. And so we finally got there and we found our spot, which was what number?
B45.
B45
45.
or 145.
I don't remember.
But it was right next to the bathhouse.
Yes.
Good spot, nice and level. I don't think we had to use a leveling block. Although, if I'm wrong, then you'll probably see it in one of our videos there at the campsite. But do we have to level?
The steps were extended all the way, and I had 2 blocks under them to get them where we could get in and out of the door.
Yeah, but that was just, it was downhill on that side. I can't
Yeah.
remember if we... Anyway, pretty level site. Nice,
Shaded.
Nice campground. A lot of big old pine trees. I guess that's what you'd use for masts and stuff. They're tall.
Probably so.
But huge pine cones and all that kind of stuff. If you hear something behind us, that's just the boy in his room. It's getting close to recess time, so we might hear some lightsabers or something go on in there in a minute. Don't worry about it. Everybody will be okay after the tears and anyway. Well, we got there, we got unloaded, got camp sort of set up, and then it happened. The penny dropped.
The air conditioner wasn't gonna cool the camper.
Yeah, it was not compressing, or it didn't sound like it, and so no air conditioning, which makes me the most unhappy daddy in the world. And there we were, no air conditioning. The first night though, it was supposed to be cool, 60 degrees.
Yeah, it was 57 when I got up about 5:30 on Monday morning.
Yeah, so we decided we'll go to Walmart, Joy, and find what we can. We were looking for a portable air conditioner. Didn't have one that we were looking for. Price kind of high, so we bought fans and got them set up and squared away there in the camper. Made it through the night okay, but the next night it was supposed to be 73 and muggy.
Humid.
And so right there on the lake, didn't want to venture that. We've done that before, and don't rest, don't sleep, and we desperately needed all of those things. So we said, all right, let's see what RV Roadway has going on. That's the dealer where we bought our camper. We bought it on the 20th of May.
30th.
30th of May, excuse me.
Last year.
So we're right here, right at the end of our warranty period. Needed to see what they had going on. They said Mr. Joe is the service manager there. Fantastic fella. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. They tried to talk us with. We looked at some videos to see if we could self-diagnose what was going on. We had an idea of what it might be, but had no way to test it to know for sure. So anyway, talked to Joe that morning. He stayed on the phone with Forest River for over half an hour trying to diagnose what could be done. And finally we said, Joe, we need to know, do we need to come see you today, or do we need to just try to tough things out, or just go home? Those were our options. And Joe said, if you bring it to me today, I will fix it and you can go on the rest of your week. So we said, all right. I think it was Olivia that was, she was playing the Wii while we were on the phone with Joe, and she heard part of the conversation, said, so long, Wind Creek, and that was what we did. We left. So we packed
30
up.
minutes. We broke camp in 30 minutes.
And got on the road, hit Calera. About what time?
That was about 1.
All right, one of the things you ought to know if you're a driver, you like to drive through the countryside, Highway 21, I think it is, between Wind Creek State Park and Calera, along that stretch, it's like being on a roller coaster. It was.
You get up the top of the hill and there's no seeing the bottom. You just go, and it was that way for miles and miles.
It was fun. It was interesting anyway.
We were all glad it was over.
We got on the interstate, headed up to Calera, and about half a mile from the exit, something didn't feel right, and we're riding there, bumping pretty bad, and I noticed as we sped up and slowed down, it got progressively faster or progressively slower, which means if it does that, something's wrong with your tire. And sure enough, when we stopped in at the roadway and got out and looked, I could see the passenger side rear tire of the truck was not normal. You could see a hump in it there, and sure enough, it was starting to separate. Which, joy. Here we are trying to get the trailer fixed and got a problem with the truck. Well, it ended up working out well because we dropped it off, dropped Woofy off with Joe. He said, just drop it right here. And they pointed us towards a tire repair center. Went there, found out they didn't do what we needed for our size operation. They're a commercial tire center, but they said, go down here to another one. We tried to get in National Tire and Battery there, and which city was that in? That was.
Oh.
That wasn't Calera. That was the other one.
Alabaster?
Maybe Alabaster, but it's right behind the Chick-fil-A. Could not even get to the National Tire and Battery because of the line trying to get into Chick-fil-A. So that wasn't going to work. Found another tire center up the road in Montevella. Is that?
I think so.
Maybe that's how you say it. But anyway, I still hadn't figured that one. Been here almost 6 years. Still can't say that town right. But anyway, we got there to, what was the name of it? Start with an M. Olivia's got the picture of it. I just can't. It's not Murray's.
We're tired.
It's not Murray's. What was it?
Oh my goodness.
Mavis.
Good job, Mick.
Thank you, son. Mavis Tire, Discount Tire, there in Montevella. And got in there, and they helped us get our tire situation sorted out. By the time we made it back to, then we went and stopped for a treat. I didn't tell you, on the night we went to Walmart, we went by Dairy Queen to see if they had, blizzard time.
Attitude adjustments, what we call them.
Sorry, sir, we don't have any ice cream. So I didn't cry as much as I did over the air conditioning, but still frustrated. We got some. They did have dilly bars. Got 4 of those.
But then they were out of pennies.
And they didn't have pennies either, which
I guess they were busy.
So we got 1 extra cent in our change. Gave us a nickel instead of 4 pennies. So hey, that's a break. We got the tire fixed. Stopped by Sonic. Their ice cream machine was working, so we, kids and I got milkshakes.
I got lunch.
I got Katie some lunch. Made it back over to RV Roadway, and Joe had already ended up changing out the top section of the air conditioning. So basically, got a new air conditioner in Woofy. Now, something we didn't have, they hadn't received yet, was the radio had just gone out in the camper some weeks ago. Obviously, not that concerned about it, but it would have been nice to have had it then. Anyway, he looked at the situation there, said it's supposed to be in about 5 o'clock, but we were, it's 3 o'clock. We're ready to get to camp. So we debated going back to Oak Mountain State Park, which is one of our, we've been there a couple of times.
Yes.
We did an overnight. The first night we got the camper, just a shakedown trip. We went back during the Southern Baptist Convention when it was in Birmingham and stayed there. But
Evelyn wasn't having it because they have an old metal slide.
Loves it. Super slide.
And if I can't slide, I'm not going to Oak Mountain.
So we said, well, where else can we stay? There's another park right there not far from Montevella.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it right now.
It's one of the historical state parks, but we couldn't put the kayaks in the water there, and that was one thing the kids were really looking forward to. So we headed to Tanny Hill Historical State Park in McAllen.
Yeah, and got there. What day was that? That was still Monday. It was
still Monday.
So we got there. We decided one of the things, Evelyn, the whole trip, she wants to walk. She wants to go. She wants to go. And so we'd already done a pretty good amount of walking around Wind Creek. But we decided, all right. So we went on some walks. Figured out kind of what the park was and some of the things that were there. They have an old ironworks. They have an old grist mill, and the museum there is not open because of the thing going on, but you still get to see some of the buildings and the structures and some of the things that are there regarding those things. So we figured out kind of what was going on around the park. Tuesday morning, we slept great Monday night, and then got up Tuesday morning. It's all right. Finally, it's time to break in these kayaks that we've been toting around on top of the truck all over the state. We got those down and put them in the creek there at Tanny Hill, and there's probably about a quarter-mile stretch of creek where you can actually paddle easily when you get up towards the mill area, and they have a large fairground area there at that park. When you get up towards that end of things, it gets really rocky, and so we decided we were bottoming out. We didn't want to afford it. We tried to walk that section of the creek, and the way that the stratas are in the rock in the creek, it is perilous. Yes, ankle breaking type stuff. So I said, well, let's just hang around. But of course, on the way up the creek, we'd already had some adventures. I figured there would be some hesitation on the part of the littlest one who had not been in the boat yet, and
she wasn't happy.
For some reason, I was not ready for what happened with our oldest daughter. They apparently saw it, and Snake. Well, I know, but
she reacted the way her mama probably would have had I been in the first boat.
There was only some screaming. She was trying not to be overreactive, which I think makes things worse for her. And they were terrified. Don't know what it is. Don't know where is it. And finally, her brother, who's in the boat with her, is trying to tell me, well, it's up on the bank. They hadn't told me it had been in the water. It had been swimming across the water. We think later research and identification, probably just a Midland water snake, which is the most commonly encountered water snake in our part of Alabama. Non-venomous.
But a snake is a snake.
I said, no, we're just going on anyway. So we paddled on up.
With me in front.
Yeah, of course. And ducked under the log there. Lost Dad's glasses in the water,
and then his keys.
Yeah, well, that had happened at some point, walking over one of the logs, trying to get things going. But it's shallow enough, the water's clear enough, you can see what's in there with you. And so, for better or for worse. And Katie would think that saw some river otters, creek otters, whatever we have in Alabama, little guys. But neat to see some of the wildlife there, ducks, fish.
Yeah.
Good grief at the squirrels, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But and we'd spent some time just playing in the creek, all kind of stuff to see there. And the shoals that we're playing in, there were little tiny fish, probably 5 millimeter,
they were tiny,
half a centimeter long fish swimming around in circles. I got some video. We'll show that. But anyway, we got back home, and so far this trip has been exhausting. But we've had some fun today. I must say, there's something terrible that happened. Possibly the worst thing, and that is the squirrels got into the Linda bread, and that's most disappointing of all.
The Linda bread was eaten. Well, that was Tuesday morning while we were paddling. We'd gotten up and fixed breakfast, and our associate pastor's wife, Miss Linda, makes amazing homemade bread. She texted me Saturday, do you want some for the trip I just baked?
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
Linda bread.
Linda bread is what it's called in our house, or Bentley bread. I didn't finish cleaning up for breakfast. It got left on the table outside. The squirrels had a feast.
Yeah.
Makai and Evelyn were devastated.
Yeah, I was upset as well. Fortunately, did not take any firearms with us. You're not supposed to have any in camp anyway, but we didn't have any, so no squirrels were harmed during the adventure.
But we learned our lesson.
Had we had some sort of weaponry, I'm not going to say what might have happened over the Linda bread. But anyway, we continued on that night. We went and explored some of the ironworks. Got to see the old pump. It's not a pump house, but the reason for having an ironworks on the river is to have a water wheel to turn the blower and to produce. Yeah. So anyway, it's there. We got to see some of it. Got to see some of the shoals that are there, and you can get in there and swim those. People do fish. One thing odd about Tannehill is they ask you to contribute $2 a day per person over the age of 6 if you're going to fish. You still have to have a valid Alabama fisher's license as well, and so I'm kind of frustrated about that. But we didn't fish; other people did. So it's good idea to wear some kind of shoes, whether it's Crocs or sandals or something, when you get in the water there, because of the possibility of fish hooks in the stream. But we got to see some of those things Tuesday night. Went back and made some s'mores. The
Chocolateless s'mores, because I forgot the chocolate.
It's one of those things, and it hadn't been in a long while, and one of those things you forget. That night the girls played in the spring.
It was after supper. All they could talk about was getting back in the water. And just a little ways from our campsite, there was one of the branches of the creek that comes into the main one we paddled in, and it starts. Golly, we counted up to 8 springs, but every time you look, there was a new spot bubbling up. But it was not quite ankle deep in most of the places. The rocks were not very rough, but the girls got in there and had a ball. They played for an hour that night, and then several hours again Wednesday. Just splashing, running up and down the creek, and just enjoying being outside in God's creation.
Yeah, Wednesday morning we got up and went hiked towards the fairgrounds, is where the old mill house is, and they called a mill pond above it, but it's really just backed up creek. But it was interesting to get to see some of the items there, and quiet water above there. There was a guy on a kayak fishing that part of the creek, and probably enjoyed himself, except for the noisy people on the bank, which was us walking through the woods there. We did some more adventuring that afternoon. Took the kayak, me and Makai did, and paddled down towards the ironworks and the shoals. Got in the shoals there with he and Olivia. I had a good time there, and actually he was worn out and they were both cold because it turned out cool on Wednesday, and so we paddled back up. Mick went back. He stayed with his sisters who played in the spring some more.
His mom had to do laundry because we stayed an extra day.
And Dad just said, no, I'm staying in the boat. So I did stay in the boat by myself for a little while. And there were 2 other dads in boats. One with a little boy in a blow-up boat. He was asking about the draft on the kayak. I get into shallow water with one of those. And then there was another guy in a polo shirt and khaki shorts with his socks and his Crocs on, sitting in a pink camping chair that he had evidently pilfered from one of his daughters in another blow-up vessel. Yep. It was.
The dads had enough.
Evidently, I was not the only dad seeking refuge on the river that day, but we had a good time Wednesday and packed. We dropped the boat into the creek near our campsite and walked it down that day instead of walking it across the parking lot, which is what I had done the day before. And so we had to hoist the boat back up out of the creek, and we packed up that night, didn't we? Pack the boats up that night.
Pack the boats up.
And,
it can be quite a task, especially as Sam has said multiple times. We don't remember what we're supposed to do, so that turned into another adventure. But it made yesterday morning less stressful as far as leaving. But after we did that, I did remember to go to the camp store and buy chocolate. So we did s'mores again with chocolate this time. And the kids had asked about a movie. And they enjoy getting in the camper, and they all climb on Micaiah's bed, which is the table. And wanted to watch a movie, wanted to eat popcorn and just be together. So we did that after s'mores.
Thursday morning, got up, went and checked out. They do have the old-timey church. It's disconcerting when you go to a place like Tannehill and you see these historic, ancient cabins, and I think there was only one cabin that was actually built before our house was built, because our house was built in 1868, and most of the things there were 1870 and later. So that kind of puts everything into perspective. They have an old church, the old country church, up on top of the mountain there, and it is quite a walk. Evelyn and I, she was on her scooter and on my bike, so we walked up the hill. No, we couldn't scooter pedal up to it. and the day before. But took the family up there Thursday morning to see that. To see they have a learning center there, which is the old schoolhouse.
But the church was beautiful. All tongue and groove, walls, floors, ceilings. Looked a lot like our kitchen does. But it is still active. Well, when COVID's not happening. They are an active congregation. They meet every Sunday.
I think it's a Methodist.
I think it is a Methodist church. But very pretty. The girls' questions as they were looking in, is that what it's supposed to be like? Are those the benches they actually would have sat on? And they're old wooden benches, but you can tell people have snagged chair cushions and made their place on their pew. But the girls were not looking forward to having to sit on those if that would have been our church.
But after that, we went back, finished packing up, and headed back to RV Roadway. Picked up the, I say we picked it up, they put in the
new radio.
Yeah, we parked in the parking lot, rolled out the camper's awning. I put out me and Katie's lawn chair. Katie fixed lunch for the kids and myself. I finished eating, was going to pick up my phone to look something up, and here comes the service guy. They'd gotten back from lunch. He's got the radio in hand. Took him. If he wouldn't have talked to us, it would have taken him less than 2 minutes to install it and get check, make sure it was working. And we were on our way and made it back home before the rains came in. And so that's our trip. That's where we've been, and looking forward to the next one. We'll see what happens between now and then. Back to life a little bit.
But in all of it, and in all the stuff that people look at and say, oh, that was an awful trip, stuff went wrong, God provided. The camper was still under warranty. We were able to get to RV Roadway, get it fixed that day. With no cost for the camper, and then the tire happened as we were getting off the interstate, not as we were on our way home.
I didn't have to change it, and
that's didn't have to change it.
I grew up on the road and trailers. That was just part of life. Stuff breaking, stuff tearing up, having to go, take the trailer for service, tires having to be changed. That's just. We've been a year in the camper now, almost. And how many trips have we been on? We've been on 8 trips.
Maybe more. I haven't counted.
They're not all vacation trips, but
no.
they're still 8 adventures. That's pretty doggone good for a year, and I hadn't had any tire problems up until now. So I think we're blessed.
But not only that, but God provided the money for the tires. Somebody handed us a financial blessing Sunday as we were at church. And that paid for the tire and allowed us to go and stay an extra night. So I'm very grateful for God's blessings.
So now we're back home. It's time to get ourselves back ready for life. And we got kind of it's terrible. We got when you look at your face and you think, oh, that's, you got the kind of the rainforest down south, and move up into the frosty Arctic forests, and then you got the whole Arctic Circle going on up here, Borean tundra with nothing.
We're blessed.
Now it's back to life.
Back to life. Back to reality. Back to ministry.
Yeah, regular good things. Well, I hope that you're blessed. Thank you for hopefully enjoying this video, and we look forward to seeing you out there somewhere, and God bless.